This is the regular cast. You know that, right? Not the
Yeah, of
bonus
course.
cast. Okay.
Yeah.
Whew. I was worried for a second.
Don't worry, I know what podcast I'm on, Luke.
Luke.
I mean, Ethan.
Why'd you call me Luke?
Because it was a joke, as if I thought I was on the Catching Foxes podcast.
Yes.
Yeah. You've heard of this.
And Luke is a member of the Catching Foxes podcast.
Yeah, Luke is on the Catching Foxes podcast with his friend Mike Gomer Gormley. Did you know they let me into the Catching Foxes Discord? Yeah, he was like, "I'll let you into ours if you let me into yours." And I
No
was like, "Yeah,
way.
sure, Luke," which is totally an unfair trade because like you don't have to be a patron to be in our Discord.
Yeah, if you let me in yours. How many people do they have in theirs?
I don't know. It's like 200 and something. It's like how many patrons they have. I mean, that's half our number, but that's all patrons. So like that's a pretty big number.
Okay. Never mind. I take it all back.
I know.
I take it all back. Welcome to The Crunch, the only podcast that knows that there's only two things that you can't eat for breakfast. It's your boy Ethan.
And I'm Patrick. Are we the two things?
No, it's lunch and dinner.
Oh, you can't eat those two things
You
for
can't
breakfast
have them for
because
breakfast.
they're a different meal.
Because they're a different meal. You thought that I was saying that people should eat our flesh and bones, which that's wrong.
That is wrong. You cannot eat people.
Been talking about
the rules about being people.
Been talking about cannibalism for a few minutes on the show, and this is our 46th installment of our weekly cannibalism series. Welcome back, especially to all the kids listening.
Kids, a cannibal is
it's when you line up a bunch of cans of soup and you get a bowling ball and it's cannonball, and it's very fun, and we all like to have fun.
Cannonball rhymes with cannonball. That's fun.
Cannonball rhymes with cannibal.
Yeah,
I guess it's because most pirates struggled on the high seas.
They really
when you've been only drinking salt water for 13 days. And your first mate starts to look like a real snack. You know what I'm saying?
In more
don't
ways
tell me
than one.
Don't tell me that Captain Hook didn't look at Shmee and think,
how do you think he got the hook?
It's from a crocodile.
It's from the alligator.
It's from the alligator.
But,
it's because Peter Pan lost his mind in a schizophrenic attack and bit off Captain Hook's hand. That's the dark side. That's the Grimm's fairy tale version of Peter Pan that nobody talks about, is that Peter Pan was actually an insane boy living on this island, eating people's hands.
He was a feral child, the son of Tarzan and Jane, and he
kidnapping young women named Wendy specifically, with the promise that she would get to live with a bunch of boys.
That's actually every Wendy's location is in honor of one of the Wendy's that Peter Pan stole. That's canon. Yeah.
Really?
Cannonball. Anyway, so I have a question. This has been it's full circle, baby. I have a question that's been burning in my soul.
Imagine Peter Pan goes to the window. One more thing. Imagine Peter Pan goes to the window to kidnap the young girl and take her away to the place where you eat the hands. He says,
it was actually a mistranslation. It was a misprint. It wasn't Neverland. It was Neverhand.
Neverhand. Imagine he goes to the window and says, "Hey, young lady, what's your name?" And she says, "Wendy." And he goes, "Wendy's nuts." And he flies away. Sprinkling fairy dust behind him.
That's not fairy dust.
That's
he's I don't know.
He's shitting and farting behind him as he flies away.
How do you think he gets the thrust? Anyway.
Wow. Tell me what you were going to say. I'm sorry.
This is a great bit. I love that. That's a good opening. I want to
like
know
Peter Pan,
what
man.
are,
so
to speak, the 7 C's.
The 7 C's?
Yeah,
like the high seas.
You said the high seas earlier.
Yeah,
it made me think something that I don't actually know what the 7 C's are. Like, could you name them?
I'll recount them for you now.
Yeah,
we're gonna sail the 7 C's. So you got the Mediterranean.
Sure, the big one.
The Red Sea.
Okay.
The Black Sea.
Gotcha.
The
I'm gonna look it up and test you.
Okay.
Right?
Am I close?
I don't know. The Mediterranean's a good place to start. I was always like,
The Caribbean.
Okay, I'm upset.
Yeah.
Um,
Lake Michigan.
so I was like, oh, let's look at the sea. So I was like, this doesn't make any sense because there's 4 oceans,
Yeah.
right? So like, are those
No,
4 out of the
there's
7?
5 oceans.
What?
Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, Arctic, and then the 5th one.
And the one we don't tell anybody about.
Yeah. The ocean
um,
the ocean of dreams that
there's
children cast into the
Wait, I know
sky.
what it is. It's the four oceans. It's Atlantic, Arctic, Pacific, Indian,
Yeah.
Oceans 11, Oceans
Mhm.
12, and Oceans 13. That's the 7
And there's
seas
even sub-oceans inside of oceans 11. There's 11 oceans within that ocean.
within those oceans. So I
Yes.
was like, okay, maybe it's not because the Pacific Ocean wasn't always
Yes.
known about.
What do you
So like
mean? What does that mean?
the people like the 7 seas, if it was
Yeah.
like a European thing,
Okay.
they didn't necessarily think, oh, the Pacific Ocean is one of, because I'm thinking, okay, pirates want to sail the 7 seas.
Right.
So you can't put like the Black Sea can't be one of the 7 seas
Why not?
because you can't
Because
get to the Black Sea
there's no
from
Russian
the other
pirates?
seas.
Because you hate
It's like,
Russia?
no, it's because the Black Sea is landlocked.
You never
So
see
you
a
can't
Russian on a boat. I've been
you
saying that.
can't sail a pirate ship up a river, you know? So it's like
You could.
yeah, I mean, but it would be pretty obvious. They'd be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, that's a pirate ship.
Yeah, not a lot
We
of
should probably arrest them."
not a lot of swashbuckling to be done on the Mississippi, I will
And
say.
now I'm upset because
What's the
it
7
the
seas?
7 seas is a figurative term for all the
No.
seas in the known world,
Okay. So it's kind
used
of a
in reference
numerology thing.
yeah, used in reference to sailors and pirates,
Hmm.
can be associated with the Mediterranean Sea, the
Yes?
Arabian 7 seas east of Africa and India, sometimes applied to the Caribbean Sea and the
Ah,
seas around the Americas. What? Okay.
those are all the things that I said except for the Black Sea,
The
which
term can now be taken to refer to these 7 bodies of water: the Arctic Ocean, the Indian Ocean, the Southern or Antarctic Ocean, the North Atlantic Ocean, the South Atlantic Ocean, the North Pacific Ocean, and the South Pacific Ocean.
okay, so
That
they
feels
just
like cheating.
that does feel like cheating. They just split up all the oceans into subsects. I don't know about that.
The world ocean is also just collectively known as the sea. I'm aware
The
of that.
world ocean.
The International Hydrographic Organization lists over 23 distinct bodies of water called
What
seas. So
kind of
there's 23 seas.
what kind of United Nations ass organization is what is it? The hydrophonic
Hydrographic Organization,
the
the
hydrographic
IHO.
the hydrographic organization uniting all the world's oceans in a mission of peace and ending world oceanlessness.
The IHO was established in 1921 as the International Hydrographic Bureau. So it's not a UN thing, but I'm sure it
It
kind of
sounds
is
like
now.
something Cardinal Casseroli invented when he was implementing his globalist plan to make the Catholic Church hand in
Cardinal
hand with the New World Order.
Cardinal Casseroli.
Yeah, that's his name.
Did he invent hot dishes of baked potatoes and and noodles?
He invented a lot worse than that, brother. Let me tell you
What?
what.
Oh no. Famous for the casserole and the Armenian genocide.
Famous for the casserole, the New World Order, the coming of
Uh-oh.
the Antichrist, a
Casserole.
different type of casserole.
The the
Tetrazzini.
Tetrazzini. If the
Cardinal
guy
Tetrazzini should be the next pope.
the Antichrist would definitely come with a dumb name like Casseroli. Who is this guy? You got to tell me about him.
His name's Cardinal Casseroli. He was the
Okay.
Vatican Secretary of State for Pope Paul VI in the beginning of Pope John Paul II's reign. He was a globalist, as
Oh,
many prelates were in that post Vatican II time period.
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
Well,
reading. I'm reading this book. It's not important. We can talk about it on the bonus podcast sometime because I don't think it's appropriate for the main audience. I might scandalize some
okay.
people.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey,
What's going on?
do you know what we're talking about today?
Well, I would be perfectly happy if we just kept talking about pirates and their ships and the things that they did or didn't do for the next hour.
Have I I I want to know how Odysseus got lost in the Mediterranean Sea. It doesn't seem that big.
Yeah, you can see the shore.
Yeah.
Just like don't leave it, you know? Like here's the thing. If you're going somewhere in the Mediterranean, and let's say this is the Mediterranean Ocean, right? Let's say you're here and you want to go here, okay?
Mhm.
You could go across the ocean that way, or you could just follow the coastline around, stop at some ports, have a
Yeah.
snack, and not get lost. But instead, Odysseus was like, I'll take the short way. Idiot. What did you even gain?
It's funny to get lost. It's funny to me to get lost on the ocean, famous for being surrounded by land. Just go pick a direction,
Pick
man.
any other direction.
Pick it. There's literally there's like a 1% margin of error where you go through the Strait of Gibraltar and don't notice. You know?
Is the Strait of Gibraltar? That's where the monkeys are.
D- what?
I'm pretty
Careful.
no. They're like actually no. It's not like that. No, it's not like that.
Famously a point of conflict between the Catholic Spaniards and the Ottoman Turks. So
Yeah.
I was wondering where you were going with that.
There's Barbary macaques in Gibraltar. Originally from the Atlas Mountains and the Rift Mountains of Morocco, the Barbary macaque population in Gibraltar is the only wild monkey population on the European continent.
Oh.
Yeah, they hang out on this rock.
Except for those dirty French.
Oh, oui,
There it
oui.
is.
It
Got
is
the
me.
French.
I do not have her. You do not talk about my wife that way. Although I do recognize that she does look a bit like the monkey on the Rock of
Mon
Gibraltar.
ami.
Bon ami.
One of my
Hon.
one of my wife's favorite bits that I do is I'll start singing the Ratatouille song with like nonsense French, and then halfway
Sure.
through I'll stop and I'll go.
What's
Very
remind
funny.
me of the Ratatouille song?
Les gens parlent du pont, les gippons. See, it's pretty fun.
That is pretty good.
Try
That
it
is so
sometime.
good.
Guaranteed laugh.
Oh man, that's a fun song. I like that song.
Yeah.
I like the idea of having this beautiful French soundtrack that's kind of whisking you away. The smell of the bread, the smell of the pasta, and a rat is cooking your food. It's like Pixar really did everything. They pulled out all the stops to not make you think about how this dirty, gross rodent was cooking with his dumb little hands. Like I can't even imagine, man.
It's great.
Yeah. We should watch Ratatouille. We should go to
But
Chuck E. Cheese. We should go to Chuck E. Cheese and play the Ratatouille music while we're there.
We take a picture with the guy in the Chuck E. Cheese costume, be like, "Hey, I loved you in Ratatouille, man."
I love you in Ratatouille.
Will you jump on my head and teach me how to cook soup?
Yeah. He's like, what's the name of the big rat? The big rat had a name in Ratatouille.
I don't remember.
That's what I would call Chucky that, unironically. When I was a kid and I went to Chuck E. Cheese, this is a continuation from last week's episode where we found out that Patrick's never been to Charles Entertainment Cheese.
I was thinking about that because I've been to other things like Andretti Thrill Park, named after the racer
Mario Andretti?
Andretti. Yeah.
Dang. Every place like that has a connection to a Pixar movie. So like Mario Andretti's place is Cars, Chuck E. Cheese is Ratatouille, PD Penguins
is the penguin from Toy Story 2.
Is Happy Feet, or
that's
Surf's
DreamWorks,
Up.
Yeah,
yeah, is an animated
that's also
film.
DreamWorks.
What's another one? What's another? Dave and Buster's, Mythbusters, right? That's that, and then the last one is you can't think of any other young. There was one called something gorillas, little gorilla. I'll have to think. I'll have to think
Rainforest Cafe.
Rainforest Cafe is the same as Encanto. I've never seen Encanto. Don't write in. So what were we talking about? I'm trying to get back to where we were.
You were talking about Chuck E. Cheese.
I was.
And
I don't remember why.
Ratatouille.
We were doing Ratatouille. We were doing Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah.
Is there something that you wanted to talk about?
I have nothing in particular. I wanted to a couple weeks ago.
It felt like you were transitioning to a topic, and so I was like taking your lead, but then I cut
No,
you
a
off.
couple of weeks ago, I mentioned to you that I wanted to resurrect an old beef. Remember?
Ooh, yes.
Yeah. So I have come to a conclusion. I've
That's
come
never
to a
good for me.
conclusion. Yeah, no, it's never good. Um,
Your
we
mother and
had
I
a
have decided.
Ethan and I, for those of you who don't remember, Ethan and I had a big fight a while ago about whether or not
I'm trying to remember what this
golf
was.
courses should exist.
Oh,
Do you
yeah.
remember this?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, golf courses are dumb and bad, and we should replace them with something that doesn't take up as much space and water. Do you remember
Yeah,
this?
because you're a utilitarian.
Yeah. And you accused me of being utilitarian, right?
Yeah.
And there's a big contingent on Twitter of people who don't like lawns. Are you familiar with this?
Yes, yeah, yeah, I've seen this.
They really don't like lawns,
Because the
and
bees.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
fair. And the funny thing is, like, in response, someone said, "Yeah, you want your yard to look like this. Have fun pulling ticks off your dog every day. You know, like that's just what's gonna
Yeesh.
happen." And that's true. It makes
Imagine
sense.
having a dog.
Ugh, cringe.
Yeah.
Um. Anyway, so I was thinking about it the other day, and I was like, "Are these the two? Are these the two options?" Because
Mm.
I see this as like a it's a false dichotomy,
Yeah,
you know? I I don't think you need like either, you know, complete annihilation of vegetation
right.
or like just letting nature
Yeah.
run its
The
course.
options are not Jumanji or your local shopping mall parking lot. Like,
Yeah.
there are 2 there's in between.
And I've come to a conclusion that it's an analogy for um it's an analogy for like the false dichotomy that like modernism, or you could say philosophical liberalism, sets up.
Mhm.
We need a sound effect for liberalism.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah. Um, there's like a dichotomy between like, oh, just like let your, you know, let passions run rampant, let individualism run rampant, you know, all this stuff versus just like our complete individual freedom versus complete control, right, of the state. And both of these things exist together. Like there's places that where nature is running free, and there's places where just destructive development has happened. And there's a not a medium point because it's something completely different. I see in the middle here, like beyond lawn and wilderness, is the garden, Ethan. I think the
Mm.
garden is a perfect metaphor or analogy for what ought to come after liberalism, right? For what ought to come out, because liberalism is failing. We all know this. Our world is falling apart, and this is just obvious to anyone who is around. Um, what comes after is a garden where it is something that is dealt with and cared for on a one-on-one basis, right? Like someone or a local group of people or a local family like keeps this garden, and they care for each plant and animal
Mm.
that lives there, and they're
Yes.
in charge of like everything is there with a purpose. Nothing is there just, you know, because it grew there. Like things that are invasive, like we get rid of them, right? Like the foxes that break in, we beat them with a baseball bat or something, you know, or we catch the foxes that lay waste to our vineyards. That's where that comes from, by the way.
Yeah, I knew it was a reference to the Song of Songs.
So their title is not a reference to the Song of Songs.
It's a reference to a song by Me Without You, which is a
Yeah,
reference to the Song of
Song
Songs.
of Songs. Yeah.
Yeah, insane.
Anyway, it's a long walk for a short drink of water, but anyway, yeah. So this is my maybe resurrecting a beef, maybe olive branch to you, right?
Oh,
Because
a
I
branch
think
that we
I think
grow in the garden.
a golf course is different than a lawn,
Yeah.
even though it has a lot of lawn elements because it is manicured and curated, and I think that is a good thing.
Yes.
But I think a garden is better than a golf course.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think a church is better than a garden. You know, like I think we can.
No, we're staying within the grass and plant
We're in the
elements.
grass
Yeah.
world. We're not leaving
We're
grass.
in the
Okay.
weeds, so to speak.
All right. That's it for
Oh,
me.
come on. That was funny.
It was
Come
funny, but I
on.
can't. How am I supposed to top that timely, fauna-centered joke? Flora-centered joke. I don't know the difference between flora and fauna.
Fauna is animals.
I don't want anyone to tell me the difference. I want to live in ignorance. This is the hard part about having a podcast, is that you can't live in ignorance. You
No.
can't say stuff, especially if you have a Discord like ours,
Yeah.
bit.ly/cringe Discord.
Yeah.
Because you can say something and then someone immediately is like, well, and then you
Yeah, the
can't.
hardest part about having a podcast is how our audience likes to engage with it, and
No,
it
no,
is
that's not what I
active.
said. The hardest part about having a podcast is the fact that I don't get to be dumb without consequences
I
anymore.
can't I
That's-
can't handle all of the fan mail that I get
no, that's not what I'm
constantly. It
saying.
comes down the chimney like the
You and
Harry
I
Potter letters.
You and I get the same amount of fan mail, and it's usually contained in the Discord. I don't get nobody sends anything to my house. Nobody sends me any personalized emails. It's just people saying, hey, at Ethan Stevie, you're wrong about this. That's usually what it is. I don't see a lot of people tagging Patrick and telling him that he's wrong.
There's a whole set of emojis in the Discord based on things that I got wrong. All right? There's a whole contingent. I don't know what you're talking about.
Name one of the things.
Maryland, the
Yeah.
Maryland thing. Come
Oh, yeah,
on.
that's true.
You want me to name a second one?
Yes, please.
Actually, I have to pull it up. You get emojis based on your schizo posting, like the
Yeah.
canola oil, the
Yes.
seed oils.
Yeah, I get emojis based on how based and red pilled I am, and you get emojis based on how cringe and soy you are, and
That's true.
that's how it's going to be. So I agree with you. I think resurrect the beef is good. I think a lot of this podcast is you catching up to me where I was a year ago.
Do you mean this episode or our entire podcast? What happened? I used to be the cutting edge. I used to be the one red pilling you.
Yeah, you did, but then I started reading my own things. I think so. We plan on having a garden in our house. Like, I've thought about
Yeah.
all of these things.
Yeah.
We probably won't do it this summer because Lord knows too much will be going on. And you have to they're giving us sod and they just put it in those squares. So do I just lift it back up to put a garden in? I don't know what to do with sod once they put it down. Can you put it, if you dig through it, it's just, you might as well just pick it up. I don't know. I don't understand.
It comes in squares like
it comes
carpet.
it comes in squares like carpet. And also I'm gonna have a septic tank at my new house. I've never had a septic tank. I've always been connected to a sewage system. So I don't know, can I plant a garden near the septic tank? Will my feces get in my celery patch?
You have to call the city and find out if you can dig there. That's part of.
But it's my land.
Yeah, so maybe not the city, but whoever put the septic tank there, like the surveyor or the property guy, whoever whoever sold you the property and dug the things,
Yeah. What if I just put it far away from where I know the septic tank is about?
That would probably be fine. So,
right.
it is your land, that is true. However, you are part of a community that's connected to a grid. This is what I was talking to a guy about this who was like,
Yeah.
I was like, you can't. I was like, the suburbs are money sucks, and from cities, cities that are run out of a central location and have a bunch of suburban sprawl. These are ruining our cities because they have to run pipes all the way out there.
And a lot of pipes.
A lot of pipes. And someone was like, "Well, I want land," and I was like, "Well, okay, then pay for it. I don't know. You got to find a water source. You got to get a septic tank, right? It's not going to be it's not going to be that cheap for you." But yeah, because you're on this grid or because you're a part of the city has laid out its grid the way that it is rightfully determined. So you have to work within that.
I agree. The other thing about this is that I have to pull internet out to my house, which is fine. But I don't think in the little town that I'm moving to, I don't think that there's going to be internet that's as fast as I get in the city. And so I'm nervous that I won't get to stream as many episodes of Seinfeld concurrently as I do now.
People get you don't need that many megabits per second.
It's so funny to me that when it says you do the speed test on Google, it's you can stream multiple HD video at the same time. It's who's watching 5 or 6 HD streams at once?
Families with 5 or 6 people.
That's true. Well, why don't you all just watch the same thing in one room?
You see, this is the thing is you say that, but everyone drives their own car to work every day. All right.
Oh,
Like that our our world is not built for people to go the same direction together.
yeah,
Our world is built for people to do everything individually. All right.
that's true. That's true. That's why we
This
need
is
a.
the
That's
problem.
why we need gardens. I'm
See,
yeah.
in order for you to have the individualism of I get to choose whatever I want to watch, you have to have the superstructure of Verizon sending running wires or whatever Verizon does. I don't know. Towers, building towers
Yeah,
probably.
cables and cords and
And stuff like
connectors,
satellites shooting into
satellites,
space and
dishes.
yeah,
Yeah. I think
nonsense.
yeah, I think the garden idea is good. I would like to plant a garden in my yard to like live this out, and I think you should too. I don't know if you can garden in
I'm
Florida.
you can't. How do you think people lived here? What are you talking about?
They soaked up the sun and they wanted to tell everyone. That's what they
I
did. They
I'm
ate
more
oranges.
I appreciate that you're kind of being like, yeah, how do we practically start a garden? I'm more interested in like the metaphor of the garden is what I'm
Oh,
more interested
I'm more
in.
interested in I want you to tell me how many of each plant to put in my 4 by 8 plot that I'm trying to
Yeah.
outline on a sheet of graph paper. Okay, so the metaphor of
Yes.
the garden is a metaphor for what? The church, heaven? What are we going
No,
for here?
I think the garden is a metaphor for what for like what mankind can do. You know,
Oh,
it's not like you know.
collaboration,
Yeah, it's
connection.
the garden is a metaphor for like it's a cooperation with nature.
Right.
It's not a submission of nature saying like you're gonna do what I want.
Well, it's kind of that.
I'm gonna plant Kentucky bluegrass on I'm gonna plant Kentucky bluegrass in Arizona and I'm gonna douse it with water that's pumped in from the mountains so that I can have a Connecticut looking lawn in the desert. Like that's not working with the land to produce something beautiful. That's demanding that the land do something that it wasn't designed to do.
Yeah,
It's
it's
what I'm saying.
subjugation.
Yeah, it's
It's not
subjugation
good.
instead of cooperation. And like gardening is in a sense exerting your will on nature,
Mm,
but it's not outside the bounds of like you're confined to the things that can grow in your area. Like I don't think I recognized until I came back the uniqueness of Florida's flora and
mhm.
fauna.
Yeah.
Like
What
the
fauna have you run across in Melbourne, Florida?
sable palms are everywhere. All right, there's a lot of
Fauna?
fauna.
Fauna.
Oh, like animals.
I'm talking critters. What have you
Yeah.
seen?
Gopher tortoises. So there's a lot of gopher tortoises around. What? Yeah, there's gopher tortoises,
Gopher
baby.
tortoise.
Seen some snakes.
Okay, that's good.
Gopher snakes.
Okay.
Haven't seen any gophers, but
That's interesting.
yeah, there's not a lot of gophers
The
actually.
the gopher is
Gopher tortoise.
legendary there that they name all the amphibians and reptiles after it, but there's no
Yeah,
actual gophers.
which of the two things that I named are an amphibian? Anyway, I'm just kidding.
Doesn't
Of
matter.
course, I've seen some fish, some seagulls, some crabs. Anyway, it's not important. But like, I went to a park that I had not been to since I moved here, right?
Mhm.
And the trees look different than trees in Pennsylvania. It's all evergreen trees. It's all
Mhm.
pine needles and like pine
Mm.
trees and like, but different kinds of pines. And all the there's a lot of sand. It's
Mm.
planted in sand. So like the parks in Florida are very sandy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like packed soil. So like
No.
different things grow there, you know?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so like it would be silly for me to try and, make a northwestern California redwood garden in Florida. I should work with the flowers and plants that grow here. I
Yes.
should grow some birds of paradise, or
Uh,
poinsettias
yes, and I think another thing to this,
depending on the season.
that you have to think about in this equation is there's when we're talking about the land, and this is also a metaphor for other things, you can't just try something one season and then if it works or doesn't work, like base your perception for the rest of your life off of that one season. So like
Sure.
if
Yeah.
you try to plant some flowers in your yard and they don't take, then you've learned something, and you have dozens of years left to like figure it out, and figure
Mhm.
out what works and what doesn't work. And I think this is why people don't really plant things, or they don't try to because they don't have that decades long patience to
Yeah,
figure out what works and what doesn't work. And that's true for a lot of things. I think
and that's because that's a generational patience, and
it
we don't
is.
have
We don't have
generations.
generational patience
Yeah,
because even like thinking about myself, like I get really frustrated if I have like a month where I'm like less productive, more distracted, not praying as much, not reading as much. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm totally failing. It's like, bro, like I have I have so many, probably 70 years of my life left, give or take, if I don't die prematurely, God willing. Like I have a long time. Like 1 month. I think we get to the beauty of a garden is it can teach you things. It can teach you that like how the last couple of weeks have been. It doesn't really matter. It can start to teach you
sure.
that like you need to give power to the things that deserve the power, right? So God controls the rain and the wind and the sun and whether things grow or whether things don't grow. And that's true for the land and that's true for you. But a lot of times we give power to the wrong things. And so
Mhm.
we like point at things. We're like, oh, it's this thing's fault or this person's fault or this organization's fault
It's
that
the goddess of the harvest.
right. It's something else that's making my plants not grow. It's some other reason that I'm not maturing in a
Yeah,
certain way. Um, and we just like give power over to people that don't deserve power over us. And
yeah.
so like I do that. Like when I'm feeling like less productive, I'm like, oh, if this thing hadn't have happened in this way, and if this person hadn't have said this thing, then I would be doing so well right now. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
well, I've now just decided to give that person power over my life. And
Yeah,
the cool thing about the garden is that you kind of have to like put the work in and then like you can't really do much more. Like you have to kind of
yeah,
give the
yeah.
power away to
Because
to the Lord and like trust that he's going to
yeah.
do something with it, which
Like,
I think
that's
is
the
cool.
difference that's the difference between the goddess of the harvest and the god of all things, is, like,
Yes.
the goddess of the harvest is kind of like a lawn. You can sacrifice your child to it, and it'll make your harvest grow, you know what I mean? It's like it's very, like, I don't know, like, it's it's,
It's two pictures. HR needs to tell you to tell the difference between these two pictures. And it's one, it's like it's Mayan child sacrifice on a ziggurat. And the other one, it's a dad sitting inside in the air conditioning while his son mows the yard in 100-degree heat. It's like
yeah,
I
that
need you to
that
tell the difference between these two.
the same picture.
Yeah.
And, like, the difference between that and the god and then, like, the god of the universe is, like, you put in the work, and ultimately it's his will, and, like, your will can't change his will.
Hmm.
It's but the pagan gods, it was like we're gonna make them change the will by making them. We're gonna change their minds by making them super swell and all that. But
Hmm.
anyway, I think there's like there's a phrase in new polity circles called
Oh
the
boy.
politics of the real, and
Mm.
it's a way of understanding the world that's based on reality, which sounds silly
Right. How
because
else would you understand the world?
but a lot of conversations now are not about how the world works. It's about how the world ought to work,
Okay.
and there's a difference there.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a conversation of, like, how I mean, ought is a good question, like, we ought to do this, right? But instead of, like, starting from, like, a point of, "Here's how the world is, here's how it ought to be, here's how, like, what virtue is and what reality is, here's what reality
Mhm.
ought to be." It's instead of conforming ourselves to the realist thing, which is God's will, we, like, we conform the real to our will, which, like, this is what
Mm.
it ought to be. I think the
Mhm.
best form of government is where the state owns the means of production, or
Yes.
where the people who own the means of production get all the profit from the production, right? It's like, great, all right, that's awesome that you think that. That's really cool. What if you based it on reality instead? And then both parties trick themselves into thinking that. Did you see that? Did you see that that discourse a while back where, like, the socialist person was like, the baker bakes a cake for the carpenter and he fixes her door. That's socialism. And, like, someone was like, no, that's capitalism because it's an exchange of goods. And I was like, you're both idiots. They're just neighbors.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
neither of your totalizing systems are what's going on here. This is just real life where, like, it's two acts of love, of genuine sacrifice, and that's why the gardener gardens, is because he loves his family and he loves his crops. He doesn't garden because he's trying to exert power over the land and, like, exert power over his family by exerting his patriarchal body to
Mhm.
feed them and make them dependent on it. Like it's not a power relationship
Yes.
in like a cynical way. It's like a loving relationship, and that love has power. And I think that's why the garden is such a good metaphor for humanity. It's because we started in a garden and we're going to a garden. And so we should focus our we should have more gardens because they're a symbol of the good. I was in a garden the other day. It was a garden where my grandfather was buried. And it was a good place to be. I was like, man, there aren't enough gardens. Um, and it was a beautiful garden. It had a palm tree in it and some Florida grass, and like that's where my grandfather lies. And it's like that's cool, you know. Not that it's not cool that he's dead, but it's like
Yeah.
it's well, it was God's will, so maybe it is. But
Hmm.
it's like the garden is it's a more human thing than either the wilderness or the lawn, you know. God didn't create Adam and put him on a lawn.
I think someone who has a lot to say about this topic is Wendell Berry.
Kendall Wary.
Bendel Wary. Um, he describes this is a kind of a unique point of view. So he has a couple is his book of essays, right, that I'm slowly
Hmm.
working through, and it's this idea that like you need to have you need to be grounded in something. So he talks about these Kentucky road builders of 1797, and they're slicing through the forest and they're building a road, right?
Mm.
And he says, on such a night, as the Reverend Young describes, an Indian would have made do with a small shelter and a small fire. But these road builders, veterans of the Indian War, felled the hickory trees in great abundance, made great log heaps, and caused them to burn rapidly. Far from making a small shelter that could be adequately heated by a small fire, their way was to make no shelter at all and heat instead a sizable area of the landscape. The idea was that when faced with abundance, one should consume abundantly, an idea that has survived to become the basis of our present economy.
Hmm.
So he's got quite a few essays in that sort of mindset, and just what we're talking about just made me think of that line that um, talking about like the realism and living in the real. Like these guys, and this is why it's so tricky, is that these builders saw the trees and they were like, well, we could use these for fuel to keep us warm.
Mhm.
But the Indian saw the trees and was like, or saw like he was in the woods. He said, I could make a small shelter and make a little fire and I could be warm. They both are right in a certain way.
Yeah.
And and I think that's why it gets so complicated when you start talking about these things, is because people see things through their own lenses. And so I think we need to adopt just really like default to the wisdom of the church, because you can't just like invent your own situation. But like a real understanding of creation and a real understanding of like sacramentality, like how the world, what the world says to us, and it's not just like here as material for us to take and to mold into whatever we want, but it's here to tell us something.
Mhm.
Like that's the transition from just regular guy to like person living a Christian life, is like
Yeah.
everything around me is telling me something about God. And that's a crazy step to take. And so if
Mhm.
you think that way, and that's how you start to live, then the garden starts to make a bit more sense than the lawn, I think.
I agree.
Cool. Do you want to do a dating question?
Yeah, sure. I have two options. One I haven't read this one yet, so maybe we should do this one because we have a not so much dating question from Camille. Maybe we'll do that one later.
Yeah,
Okay,
do
this one
the
comes
yeah.
from Ramblin' Gambler on
Ramblin',
bit.ly/crunch Discord. Yep.
the place to be for you.
Yeah. Long time listener, first time caller. I have a question for the Discord or the good doctor. Last summer, I got engaged, and congratulations. And we were planning the
Yay.
wedding for this coming weekend, April 15th. Wow.
Okay, that was 2 days
Uh oh.
ago.
Uh oh.
Uh-oh.
Well,
Whoops. Uh-oh.
as we
Whoops.
went through wedding planning, I began to realize everything was an argument between me and her and her parents, me and her versus her parents, me and her parents, etc. The specifics of that don't really matter, but we broke up in early January of this year and have permanently called everything off. Fast forward to last March or late March, I met a girl online. We had actually met at a young adult thing last summer, just before I got engaged, and the night before we matched online at the Catholic Charities banquet dinner. Um, that he met her. He also saw her at a Catholic Charities banquet dinner the night before they matched
Whatever service they were
on
using.
whatever service they were using.
Yeah.
Not sponsored. We started talking and have been on a few dates and both want to keep seeing each other. The problem is I feel like I have to tell her I was engaged earlier this year. I don't know how to bring this up. I don't think I can avoid it entirely because I moved in with my parents last fall to save money before the originally scheduled wedding. So I need some advice on how to bring this up. Thank you. I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say. One bit of context: the girls don't know each other at all. The ex-fiance lives an hour and a half away.
Okay.
Someone said tell her as soon as possible.
I don't think that's true.
I don't think that's true either.
I don't think. I mean, have they gone on a date? They just matched, right? Like, it doesn't seem like that they've engaged in any sort of
Yeah.
dating relationship. And so
real quick,
yeah, what's
I'm
up? What's
getting
up?
a phone call from my
Okay.
boss.
Your boss.
Yeah, and it's the end of the day, so I gotta pick it
Hey,
up.
you guys are about to see who Patrick really works for, huh?
Good evening. Cool. Sorry about that.
That's okay. I was playing Team Fortress 2.
Oh yeah.
What were we
Important stuff.
saying? What were we talking
You were
about?
talking about telling her right away.
Yeah, you don't need. I mean, if you're not dating, you don't need to. There are
Yeah.
some things that. So, like, if you had a
They've been on a few dates and want to keep seeing each other.
okay,
Yeah.
if you had a child with this woman, I would bring that up first date. Even if you were like going through a divorce currently, that's something I would bring up. But even if you had married her and gotten a divorce, you don't even really need to bring that up until you're like officially
Yeah.
dating. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's not. And for this situation, it's like, okay, you were going to get married and then you didn't. So, like, it just lets, like, telling that girl right away, I don't know if that achieves anything other than, I don't know.
Okay.
It feels like too much too soon. So,
We can figure out timeline here. All
yeah.
right. So last summer, so like June, he got engaged. They were
Okay.
planning the wedding for April. So they
Yeah.
got engaged and they
broke up in January.
met at a young adult thing. He met the new girl at a young adult thing last summer before he got
Oh,
engaged.
before he got engaged.
So
Oh.
he was
When was
dating
the
when they
gala?
first met. Yeah, right at a gala or something, Catholic Charities banquet.
Okay. And then they matched on Tinder or whatever
Or
recently.
whatever. Yeah, and they he was not engaged in the summer. He got engaged in the summer. They were planning on a wedding for less than a year later, but 4 months before, 6 months after they got engaged, they broke it off 4 months before the wedding.
Okay.
I'm like, that's an engagement, so it's serious, but like, that's
It's
not a very
really,
long engagement, you know?
yeah, it's not a very long engagement. And it's also just like,
Writing was
I
on the
don't know.
wall, I'm sure, you know?
Yeah. I mean, there's no sacramental reality to engagement. It's really just girlfriend plus, you know, like
It's not wife minus.
it's not wife minus. It's just
Yeah.
girlfriend plus. A lot of people treat it like wife minus.
When you're dating, it feels like engagement is wife minus, but it's girlfriend plus.
Yes. And
Yeah.
it's because you can break it off at any time. And like people are disappointed. Maybe somebody loses some money, but there's no long term damage to your soul
Yeah.
or anybody
Yeah.
else's. You know, like it
Yeah.
just is. And not to say the people that get divorced damage their souls. I'm just talking out my butt at the end of a podcast.
There's no
But
residual. Yeah.
yeah,
It's like,
there's nothing that's hanging on. You just it's a clean break. And so I think for this, it's like, yeah, let her know when it is appropriate. Like, let her know when it comes up in conversation.
yeah.
Let her know when you feel like you know her well enough to share that with her in a way that she would understand, in a
Yeah.
way that she would receive, and when you feel comfortable sharing it.
Yeah. And just bring it up in a way that's like, hey, this is like a thing that happened. I was engaged to this girl.
Mhm,
And be honest, be like, yeah, we kind of knew it wasn't going to work, but it took us a while to really, get it set in stone. And,
mhm.
it took us a while to break things off. And like,
Yeah.
it was kind of
Honesty
a
is the
mess.
best
And
policy here. If you
yeah,
hide something about this engagement and then she finds out about it later, then it's just like you undermine the rest of your relationship that you could have with this
mm,
girl. And so you just got to be upfront and like, if it's your fault,
yeah,
own it. And you
yeah,
don't need to like talk about what your ex-fiance did because now's not the time to throw stones either. Like you just have to, you just kind of say, yeah, what Patrick said, like this wasn't going to work out. I really made some mistakes. I've learned a lot of things. My ex-fiance is great. You know, she's doing her own thing. Yeah, this is not an opportunity for you to bash your ex-fiance in a way to try and gain points with your new girlfriend.
Yeah.
Because that's also not healthy.
Yeah, definitely. Like when you're like, I want to ask this girl out, be like, all right, I'm gonna tell her soon. Like once you know that you want to ask her out and like be serious and be exclusive and all
Mm-hmm.
that, then you'd be like, all right, I need to tell her, because don't like run around telling people that you were engaged and all the different details about it, because
Yeah.
that's not a great, you don't want people in your circles being like, oh, that's the guy who got engaged, and then because everyone's gonna have opinions. That's too long, or that's not long enough to get over it. It's like honestly, I I went through a breakup in college. It was a serious relationship, but it was like the writing was on the wall. We had broken up long before we actually called it off. It's like it didn't it everybody takes a different time. There's no chemically provable this is how long you need to get
Yeah.
over her two times as long as the relationship, half as long as the relationship, all that stuff. It's like silly. And
Imagine. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
people are like, oh, someone on the Discord is like, that's really short after a serious relationship, it's really short post engagement. I think that's true based on your experience of your engagement.
Yeah.
Like my experience of my engagement was, it's possible that you guys like you dodged a bullet and you like really weren't thinking when you got engaged, like, and that's possible to say too. I don't know.
Imagine he tells this girl as soon as possible. She calls him today, like, "Hey, how's it going?" Says, "Hey, it's going great. I was engaged."
Is that okay?
Hey, do you want to go get frozen yogurt this weekend? I was engaged before,
I was
and now
engaged.
I'm not.
Please stay with. I was engaged. I was supposed to get married this weekend.
I was supposed to get married. We could go get ice cream. It's a week after when I was supposed to get married the last time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, like
I don't recommend it.
it's just really strange. I wouldn't recommend that at all, unless you think it'll help you court this woman.
Hmm.
Hey, I've been engaged to like 4 or 5 women. I'm, I'm, I date you'll be girlfriend plus plus. You're double. You're Disney plus. You're my girl.
Yeah, it was a big plot. It was a big like plot point on The Office when one of the characters' new girlfriend found out that he was engaged to another person like a couple of years earlier, and she like went crazy. And I was like, this is just, I don't think any woman would react that way.
No,
Like,
they would be like, oh, this is a man who knows what he wants and didn't go through with the thing he didn't want. That's good.
yeah.
I think you're fine. I think everyone needs to relax. I think more people should get engaged and break it off. I'll say it.
Sure. Yeah. More people need to stare down the barrel of commitment
Yeah, because I
and
think engagement's this
blink.
whole to do. Because you got the party, you got the pictures, you got the ring, you got the this, you got the that. Just get engaged and then break it off. It's really just like the only way to
What are
know
you
if
gonna
you.
lose? $2,000 on the ring and the deposit? Come
Yeah, it's
on.
either $2,000 or you spend another year of your life just dating. The longer that you're not engaged, the longer that you don't get married, the longer you have to fornicate. And I'm just trying to avoid that at all costs. I'm not saying get married to avoid fornication, but I am saying
You're putting
there
your soul at risk.
I'm saying there's a correlation here, and it should not be discounted.
Sure. Sure.
Thank you. That's
I
all I
don't
needed from
necessarily
you
agree.
today. It's the end of the podcast. I'm tired. It's Monday. I'm hungry.
Me too.
I've had a long day. We've been through a lot at the Stevie household. I was going to tell the story on the show, but I didn't
Oh
really have time
yeah.
to tell it.
Yeah, you're getting a camera.
It's a whole thing. But Emma had to call the police because she was on her walk, and there was this truck that she thought was following her that may or may not have actually been following her. And so she had to like
Happens.
go up to someone's house and be like, "Hey, can I hang out here while the like police come?" And so we're gonna get a Ring camera. So I'm very
Cool.
excited about that. I'm excited to be able to be at work and then see when the UPS guy takes a dump on my porch.
Finally. I knew
Yes,
it's him.
and then I can sell the footage for thousands of dollars.
Yeah, to America's
To
Funniest Home Videos.
TMZ. Oh,
Oh,
both.
Anyway.
Bit.ly/crunch, Discord, patreon.com/thecrunch. These are all the places you can find out all the other stuff that we're doing besides this show. YouTube, subscribe. We're almost at 200 subscribers. We need 3 more subscribers to hit 200. So
wow.
Get there, click the button, smash the like, hit subscribe, click the bell.
If you want to read The Hunchback of Notre Dame with us on our book club bonus podcast, you can sponsor the podcast at $10 a month. You can give us money like simony.
Yeah.
So we can, if you give us money, we'll preach you the gospel. And and we're making money off of
we're gonna charge money for better access to more Catholicism.
Yeah, we're creating culture. Our podcast is very important. We are creating culture by
you can't be holy without you will not be a saint if you do not give us $10 a month.
Holy without becoming a patron on patreon.com/thecrunch.
We should do mass hypnosis, but instead of getting everyone to wear masks and take the vaccine, we should get them to join our patreon.com.
The government really missed an opportunity to get more patrons on patreon.com/thegovernment.
Imagine if the government
imagine a bunch of New York Times opinion columnists hand-wringing about how people are being irresponsible and not giving $10 a month to the government.
Imagine paying $20 a month and all you get is AOC and Ted Cruz playing Fortnite. The worst. I'd pay it. Anyway, Patrick, do you have anything else for the people?
Join us next week when we find the secret 8th sea.
Thank you all for listening. Please pray for us. We will be praying for you, and we will see you all next week.